Kenichi is the usual corporate slave who dies from exhaustion and gets isekai'd to another world. However, everything changes when he gets a cheat system that lets him buy anything from Earth, making him the richest merchant in the country who gets to clap any shoddy he wants. It all starts when Kenichi nearly dies after overworking himself at his dead-end job, so he moves to the countryside to live a slow life. There, he creates his own farm and spends the evenings gooning to Annie and recaps. One day, Kenichi is suddenly teleported to a forest where he spots a dead knight and becomes terrified. Just then, the status window appears before him, and Kenichi becomes certain he has been Isekai'd. Looking through his stats, he quickly discovers that he doesn't have any overpowered skills, but instead, he can access Walmart, the online shopping site that he used in his own world. When he tries to buy something from Walmart, he realizes that he doesn't have the money to shop. After some tweaking, he comes to know that if he inserts valuable items in the status window, he'll be able to earn money, which will then allow him to get stuff from Walmart. However, since he has nothing of value, his eyes land on the dead knight who has a sword lodged inside him. Without thinking much, he barters the sword and gets something to eat. With the remaining money, Kenichi buys a bike and uses it to scavenge the area to get more items for trade. Once night falls, Kenichi decides to make curry for dinner, and while he's eating, his meal gets interrupted by a pack of deadly foxes. As he helplessly scrolls through Walmart for guns, Kenichi realizes he can't use one since he's not an American schoolboy, so he buys a slingshot and uses it to scare the foxes. With that, he quickly hops on the bike and rides all night until he reaches the edge of the forest and spots a city on the horizon. Using his capitalistic brain, Kenichi decides to enter the city and make his living by selling items from Walmart. As he walks towards his destination, he's almost hit by Truck Kun's great-grandfather, Carriage-chan. The driver quickly apologizes and offers to give him a free ride to Dahlia, so Kenichi accepts. Hopping on board, the driver reveals he's a merchant by occupation and gives Kenichi some basic business ideas for his new life in Dahlia. Once they arrive, Kenichi helps the merchant carry boxes and offers him some pepper for being so kind to him. But instead of being thankful, the merchant warns Kenichi that if he sells spice, he'll be in trouble since a syndicate named Bacopa has a monopoly on spices. The merchant then hands him some coins in exchange for spice, teaching him never to sell anything for free. After he leaves, Kenichi appraises the coins and realizes that the currency in this world is far more valuable than the money required to shop in Walmart. Later on, he checks into a lodging, where he's greeted by Azalea, the friendly receptionist who quickly notes that he's not a native. Kenichi then reveals that he's a foreigner who wants to be a merchant in Dahlia, but she informs him that if he can't read, write, or do maths, the Merchants Guild won't give him a work permit. This upsets Kenichi since he can't read or write this world's language, but he quickly bribes Azalea with some candies to give him private lessons. That night, Kenichi realizes that he can easily master this world's language since it's similar to Japanese. Meanwhile, Azalea's sprinkler goes off, seeing Kenichi working hard as she concludes that he has the potential to be a smart businessman. She then starts flirting with him, but once Kenichi paints her a portrait, she turns into a complete hoe.
Yeah, boy.
Before things get heated, Kenichi tells Azalea that he's the same age as her father, but this only excites Azalea further as she jumps on his funny bone.
It should have been me, not him!
The next day, Kenichi gets his work permit from the Merchants Guild thanks to Azalea's private lessons. Returning to the lodge, he orders some clothing pins from the shop, and Azalea urges him to sell them because she's never seen them before. Taking her suggestion, Kenichi sets up a stall full of kitchen items next to a woman named Anima, who becomes his first customer. Soon enough, Kenichi's clothing pins sell out like hotcakes, which makes him realize that he can make big money by selling the most basic items. Just then, a rich-looking man shows up and asks Kenichi if he has something like a big sword. In response, Kenichi offers him a hunting sword whose quality impresses the man so much that he pays Kenichi good money for it, which makes him super rich at Walmart. That night, a maid called Margaret showed her mistress, Primula, the clothing pins from Kenichi's stall. Amazed by the item, Primula announces they should sell something similar in their trading company. The next day, Kenichi adds Temu-style jewelry to his stock and hopes it will catch a dumb noble's attention. Noticing this, Anima tells Kenichi that if he had been a woman, she would have accused him of being a witch for selling such unique items.
Oh, hell no!
Laughing nervously, he replies to the old lady that he's getting these items from a good supplier. When Margaret arrives at his shop and he instantly recognizes her as the maid who took a ton of clothing pins from him. Once again, Margaret asks for 100 clothing pins until her eyes land on the trinkets. Bedazzled by it, she asks Kenichi if it's made of diamond, but he honestly reveals that it's polished glass. Since she has never heard of such a material, Margaret tells Kenichi to keep the trinket aside for her. After she leaves, Kenichi is greeted by the big black beastmen who ask him if he has any spices. But before he can speak, the beast woman named Maeli sniffs his armpits and warns him not to lie since he smells of tikka masala. Luckily for Kenichi, Anama comes to his rescue and tells the beast folk not to bother him for spices, as it will be bad if he comes under Bakappa's notice. Hearing the name, the beast folk shudder in horror, stating they don't want a feud with the spice syndicates. At first, Kenichi is confused by who this Bakappa is and why he keeps hearing the name, but then shrugs it off and tells the beast folk that if he can't sell them spices, he can cook them food with spices. Out of excitement, they carry Kenichi to the river where he instantly gets to work. Once the meal is prepared by Kenichi, the beast folk admit that his cookout tastes better than their grandma's secret fried chicken recipe. Yet, they tell Kenichi that good food should be paired with good booze, which annoys Anama, who tells them to show some restraint. But Kenichi laughs and assures Anama that it's okay and pours the lad some sake. While the beast folk dance around the bonfire, Anama tells Kenichi that he is too nice for his own good. Laughing at her comment, Kenichi states that it's good to have fun and forget the horrors of mankind. Later that night, Maeli thanks Kenichi for his goodness by giving him the sloppiest toppy in the world.
Yeah, boy.
The next day, when he returns, reeking of another woman, Azalea reminds him that she owns the finest set of cheeks in the whole of Dahlia by bending in front of him. Realizing she is upset, Kenichi lies and quickly tells Azalea that he was with the boys, which prompts her to pat his shirt, which ends up revealing Maeli's kitty hair. Once Azalea angrily walks away, Kenichi heads out to put up his stall, thinking that he doesn't need a woman who lets him crack on the first night anyway.
She belongs to the streets.
Just as he is thinking he is better off living the bachelor life, Primula appears with her jiggly and wiggly. Mesmerized by her beauty, Kenichi tries to look away, causing his eyes to land on Margaret. Upon finally noticing her, he brings out the trinket that he had kept aside for her. As Margaret shows the trinket to Primula, she instantly asks Kenichi if he has more products. Once he presents her with all the jewelry, Primula introduces herself, revealing she's the heiress of the Mallow Trading Company and wishes for him to meet her father. Since Anima has been listening to the conversation, she informs Kenichi that Mallow is one of the major traders in Dahlia and is a man with good character. Upon hearing this, Kenichi realizes he can't let this opportunity go, so he instantly hops inside the carriage with Primula and Margaret. On the way, Primula admits that she tried to make his clothing pins but failed, which causes Kenichi to reveal that clothing pins look simple but actually require advanced technology. Upon arriving at the destination, Kenichi is greeted by Mallow, who warmly greets him and reveals that he wants him to become a supplier for his company. In response, he asks why he didn't just buy his stuff from him for cheap, which he could have resold for higher profits. Mallow answers him, revealing that it's unethical, and besides, he didn't want their competitors to be recruiting him with better offers. While Kenichi is impressed by Mallow's ethics, the merchant asks him if he'd like to sign an exclusive contract that will allow him to make a 50% profit. Finding Mallow's terms agreeable, Kenichi decides to sign an exclusive contract with his company, and to celebrate this, Primula buys all his trinkets with cold coins, that resulting in Kenichi having an 8-digit balance for Walmart. With enough money, Kenichi heads to the forest with the plan of leading a slow life, something that would be similar to his old life. After cracking Azalea one last time,
Yeah, boy.
he gets started on his plan of building a good base in the deep forest. After days of manual labor, Kenichi grows annoyed and realizes that he only likes moving his hands for gooning sessions. So he makes a desperate purchase of a backhoe and later realizes that Walmart doesn't sell diesel. But since he has made such a hefty purchase, Kenichi resorts to buying lamp oil. However, knowing it won't be enough, Kenichi buys a diesel generator and then prays to the god of diesel called Vin Diesel to handle the rest. In the end, everything comes together, so he allows himself to celebrate by bathing in the cold river. Suddenly, his arm starts to get itchy, and Kenichi realizes that he got bitten by a bunch of bugs. At that moment, Azalea comes to his mind, since she told him about a bug repellent shop in the city. So the very next day, he goes to the shop and learns the owner is a mage. After making an introduction, Kenichi buys mosquito repellent stones from him and barters some oranges as payment. After making the purchase, Kenichi stops by Anama's shop, where he sees a wanted poster of a bandit named Shaga. Returning to the forest, Kenichi instantly gets to work, announcing his intention of building a log cabin. However, once the energy fades, he realizes his funds are looking drier than your love life.
You're broke!
So he'd better get to work. Without wasting time, he arrives at Mallow's residence and presents him with the finest quality of sugar. However, Mallow gives him an underwhelming reaction and reveals that while his salt and sugar do be bussing, he can't buy them since their nation has exclusive rights to them. This bums out Kenichi until Mallow asks him if he still had those trinkets, since they were a big hit among nobles. Upon hearing this, he quickly spawns some and earns plenty of gold coins. Returning to his base, Kenichi instantly gets to work by buying a log cabin from Walmart. At first, he thinks he's getting a good deal until a bunch of logs spawn out of thin air, which makes Kenichi realize that he'll have to assemble everything himself. Unfortunately, since he doesn't have YouTube tutorials to guide him, he becomes frustrated until the beast folk from earlier stop by to give him a hand. After weeks of labor, Kenichi's cabin is finally assembled. However, with one problem dealt with, he now wonders what he should do to get electricity. Another month goes by as Kenichi toils hard to make his cabin more homely. He creates some fences, adds a portable toilet, and installs a sink inside his kitchen. For electricity, he sets up 20 solar panels, and once everything comes together, he allows himself to finally relax. As Kenichi eases up, he admits to himself that not many boomers would have been able to achieve their dream of living a quiet, slow life in the woods. The next day, Kenichi breaks the news to Azalea that he has finally built himself a cozy place to live. With that, he thanks her for taking care of him and walks away, leaving Azalea all sad since she won't be getting his long dong anymore. Returning home, Kenichi decides to scout the forest when he suddenly triggers a trap and ends up becoming a victim of 1,000 arrows. As he quickly hides, he hears multiple people plotting his murder since they don't like him living in the forest. Enraged by this, Kenichi quickly retaliates by activating his slingshot and calling upon his backhoe. After successfully scaring away his oops, Kenichi finds an arrow lodged inside a cat-like creature. Feeling terrible for the poor animal, Kenichi quickly helps him by applying medicine and feeding him some pain medication. However, since the creature is unable to move, Kenichi tries to shelter him in his item box, but realizes that he can't store living beings. In the end, he carries the feline home, but when the beast doesn't move, Kenichi grows worried and takes him to the mage. However, instead of healing the bobcat, the mage tells Kenichi to just skin him and sell his hide. At that moment, Kenichi comes to realize that this world is quite ruthless. Exiting the shop, he is greeted by Mayali, who reveals that bobcats are considered messengers of gods among beast folk. As Kenichi takes Mayali to his cabin, she angrily tells him that this is the work of dogmen. That night, Mayali thanks Kenichi for saving the bobcat by giving multiple mouth hugs to his noodle. A couple of weeks later, the bobcat makes a full recovery and returns to the wilderness. Now alone, Kenichi decides to focus on building a well, which takes him a couple of days. After a week of labor, Kenichi smiles in satisfaction as his well comes together. Out of nowhere, he is greeted by Primula, who reveals that since his shop was closed, she came to see if he was okay. Her eyes then drift towards the backhoe, and she quickly asks Kenichi about it. Since he knows Primula doesn't have enough brain cells to understand, he just tells her that it's his familiar. Primula is instantly impressed by this as she tells Kenichi that he's truly a man of talents. But in response, Kenichi nervously tells her to keep it a secret from others. Thinking that she is now special to him, Primula becomes all excited and announces that she is going to spend the night with him. However, knowing women rarely bathed in medieval times, Kenichi welcomes Primula to try his bath, so she takes him up on the offer and goes in for a soak. However, in the middle of the bath, she starts feeling scared and asks Kenichi to stay with her. Seeing how she's terrified, Kenichi tells Primula that she can try his bath some other time, but she insists that she should use this opportunity to get that fish smell out of her hoo-ha. Sighing at her response, he asks Primula what she would do if he turned out to be a diddler. Primula smiles and tells Kenichi that he can't be a bad person since he's always helping everyone around. After the bath, Kenichi gives Primula a robe, which fascinates her as she urges Kenichi to add it to his inventory. Once she is all dried up, he hands her a nightgown, prompting Primula to state that if he sells clothes, he will end up becoming the top merchant of the kingdom of Kaidan. Kenichi, who is busy drawing, tells Primula that he's not interested since he doesn't want to attract extra attention to himself. Understanding his concern, Primula promises that her company will ensure he makes a good profit to lead a comfortable life. In response, he shows her a portrait he made of her which instantly rizzes her. The next day, Kenichi worries Malo will get angry at him for letting his daughter stay overnight, but he surprises Kenichi by thanking him. Later on, Kenichi shows the bathrobes to Malo, but takes things too far by showing him a see-through nightie. Feeling embarrassed, Malo changes the subject by revealing that a man from the neighboring empire has not only created double bookkeeping ledgers but also came up with a hand pump. Surprised by the information, Kenichi wonders if there's someone like him. Feeling a little frustrated at not being unique anymore, Kenichi tries to impress Malo and Primula by showing them a drawing of his bicycle. However, they laugh it off, thinking he's just joking. Later that night, Primula visits him again and reveals that she's going off on a business trip for a month. So to make this night memorable, Primula tells Kenichi that she has feelings for him and assures him that her father doesn't mind. This shocks Kenichi, who tells Primula that he needs some time to consider. The next day, he bids her goodbye and comes home when he's greeted by the noble Norseball, who introduces himself as a knight and tells Kenichi that he has come to inspect his land. Seeing the solar panels, he asks Kenichi about them, which causes him to lie as he tells him that it's magic-related. To buy his good side, Kenichi offers him silver for his blade, which prompts Norseball to reveal that in the neighboring state, a mage is creating unique items like mayonnaise. Shocked, Kenichi becomes more interested and wonders more about this Giga Chad. A month later, Kenichi sits in his stall as usual and realizes Primula should be returning any day from her work travel. Suddenly, he hears a ruckus in the street, and before he knows it, Margaret comes to him with a worried look. As he follows her, he finds Mallow pleading with an adventurer to rescue his daughter, but he shrugs him off, stating that he won't take on Shaga and his bandits. That's when Kenichi learns that Primula has been kidnapped by the thug. As Mallow begs him to save his precious daughter, Kenichi begins recalling Primula and her huge pumpkins, which causes him to give his word to Mallow that he will save Primula no matter what. In response, Mallow expresses his gratitude while Kenichi tells him to put out a fat wad of cash so he can rescue his princess. As Mallow quickly hands him a bag of cash, he urges all the civilians to step back since he is about to do a summoning ritual, and once his path is cleared, he buys a truck from Walmart. However, to protect himself, he tells everyone that the truck is a horseless carriage that operates on his command. Thinking he has bought everyone's favor, Kenichi then asks the men to help him take down Shaga and his thugs, but they all silently step back, knowing that not even the knights and adventurers are ready to fight a villain like Shaga. Out of nowhere, the bobcat he rescued joins him, which uplifts Kenichi's morale when suddenly the beast folk arrive and tell Kenichi that they will help him in his hour of need. As a token of his gratitude, he gives Mayali and her men advanced weapons from Walmart but tells them that the quality of the weapons is good because they're imbued with magic. A few minutes later, Norseball comes and asks Kenichi if he can join them as well. Believing there's strength in numbers, Kenichi gladly accepts Norseball's help and then asks him why he's wearing the whole battle outfit. Unveiling his newly finished blade, Norseball states that he used his steel to craft the sword and reveals that hunting down Shaga would be a fitting first battle for his sword, which is why he's helping him out. Just when Kenichi thinks Norseball isn't as innocent as he looks, the mage from the tool store arrives and asks if he can join too. At first, Kenichi tells the old man to go home until the mage reveals that he used to be a mighty adventurer, which is why he can be really helpful in their quest. Shortly after, Anima arrives and says that she's coming too. However, Kenichi tells the woman that it'll get dangerous, but Anima insists that she wants to help, and the least she can do is make them food while they're fighting the bad guys. Smiling at her hospitality, Kenichi allows Anima to come with them. With his team ready, he heads to the Adventurers Guild to get registered. The receptionist reluctantly helps Kenichi get registered since just hearing the name of Shaga terrifies the wussies. However, Kenichi doesn't care since he's determined to save Primula and get his hands on the bounty placed on Shaga's head. Meanwhile, in Shaga's prison, Primula gets offered food by a dirty runt named Anemone. But seeing how frail she is, Primula tells her to just have the bread. As Anemone wolfs down the food, Primula tells her that they'll get out of this prison together. When she asks how, Primula tells her that a middle-aged god will surely come to rescue them. Elsewhere, Kenichi treats his team to some food, but the beast folk and the old mage end up taking a liking to the cat food instead. Anima then announces she is going to stay back as Kenichi reveals the plan for taking down Shaga. With everything set in motion, he hands the team some transceivers and tells them they're a magic item that will help them communicate. Before heading toward Shaga's castle, Kenichi tells Anama that if they're not back in one day, she must report to the Adventurers Guild that the plan has failed and they're all likely dead or sold to Red Rooms. After arriving at the destination, Kenichi asks Maeli to scout the castle, who informs him that all the thugs are currently busy getting lit up. As Kenichi tells his squad, it's show time. One of the beastmen gives him a drug which gets him high before the battle. Now with a rebellious attitude, Kenichi drives through the forest while Maeli takes down the watchman with her arrows. Next up, the mage clears the entrance by using magic, allowing the beastman and Norseball to launch an attack on Shaga's goons. Seeing his squad overpower the scums, Kenichi lets his guard down as a thug sneaks up on him, but before he can hurt him, the bobcat comes to his rescue. Despite their bravery, Shaga starts to overpower them with numbers. However, Kenichi doesn't lose his confidence as he summons the backhoe and uses it to scare away the thugs. Seeing this, Anemone wonders if the god Primula spoke of has finally answered her prayers. Meanwhile, Kenichi searches for Primula everywhere until he spots Shaga holding her with a knife. Acknowledging his bravery, Shaga tells Kenichi that he didn't know the guild would send a monster to save Primula. Kenichi replies with insults and tells Shaga to release Primula at once. However, the thug orders them to lay down their weapons, or he will squeeze Primula's pumpkins right in front of them. Enraged by this, Kenichi secretly communicates with Miley and tells her that he'll compromise Shaga's vision, which will give her enough time to shoot him dead. Once the plan takes action, Miley fires her arrow, injuring Shaga on the shoulder. Seizing this opportunity, Primula runs to Kenichi when suddenly Anemone magically makes Shaga lose his footing, allowing Miley to shoot him dead. With everyone safe and sound, Kenichi helps the women being diddled by Shaga by providing them with clothes and a bath. During this moment, he spots Anemone and requests that Primula bathe and cut her hair. However, seeing the scissors, Primula's hoo-ha begins to drool like Pavlov's hungry dog. She hugs Kenichi and tells him that he should supply the scissors to their trading company, as it will make them a lot of profits. Later on, Kenichi gets acquainted with Anemone properly, who then helps them by revealing that Shaga was commissioned to kidnap Primula by a noble. The next day, Kenichi brings Primula back to Dahlia, allowing her father to have a tearful reunion with his daughter. Once they are done greeting each other, Mallow asks Kenichi if he has gathered all the loot in his item box. This prompts him to remember some very gross memories of last night, as he had to store Shaga and his thugs' heads in his item box to successfully meet the bounty criteria. Even then, he had been frustrated since all he wanted to do was lead a quiet life in the woods. But among the decapitated heads, Kenichi also managed to store all of Shaga's loot and the coins he had made by being a notorious villain. Once that was done, he asked the victims of Shaga if they wanted him to take them back home. However, the girls nervously revealed that their parents won't accept them since their bodies have been tarnished. After hearing that, Kenichi then offered them a ride to Dahlia as he told them the city would be more welcoming to them than their own homes. Stepping forward, Primula also assured them that they'll find employment at her father's company, so they don't have to worry. On that note, Kenichi turned towards Anemone and asked her about her village. However, noticing her reluctance, Anima revealed to Kenichi that Anemone was most likely sold by her own parents to reduce the financial burden. Feeling sorry for her, Kenichi decided to bring her along. Now in the present, he shocks the Adventurers Guild by presenting the heads of 52 thugs. The mage then tells Kenichi that his magic is exceptional, but if the nobles get wind of it, he'll be in trouble. Laughing nervously, he begs the mage to keep his mouth shut when Norseball arrives and tells him he's going to inform Count Asclepius about the nobles who were involved in Primula's kidnapping. By the end of the day, Kenichi receives 800 gold coins for his endeavor, which he distributes among his helpers. However, Anima tells Kenichi that she doesn't need money since she didn't help them take down the bandits, but then she requests him to let her take care of Anemone as her own daughter passed away during a plague. Kenichi smiles and tells Anima to take good care of Anemone. With that, he leaves for Azalea's pub, where she instantly greets him by asking if he's the one who defeated Shaga. Knowing her, Kenichi lies and says that she got the wrong dude. Despite not believing him, Azalea asks Kenichi if he's going to wife her up now that he has money. This makes him nervous since he doesn't want to make the community hoe his wife, so he nervously tells her that he made no such promises to her. Upon hearing this, she starts fake crying while Kenichi excuses himself and goes to rest in his old room. Later that night, Azalea sneaks inside Kenichi's room and tells him that she wants his cream. But before they can get the cardio going, Anemone and the Bobcat Bamboozle make a surprise entry, and in the end, Kenichi winds up sharing a bed with Anemone. The next day, Kenichi searches for Anima, but when he's unable to find her, he decides to let Anemone hang out with him as he goes around selling the loot to multiple businesses. Once he is done wrapping up business, he heads to his cabin, where he finds a worried Anima. Turns out she had been looking for Anemone everywhere, and when she couldn't find her, she decided to stop by Kenichi's cabin. Unfortunately for Anima, Anemone tells her that she wants to stay with Kenichi. Despite being sad, Anima tells Anemone that she can always stay with her if she changes her mind. Once the old lady takes her leave, Kenichi asks Anemone why she is hellbent on staying with him. In response, she tells him that he feeds her till she's full. After laughing at her answer, Kenichi prepares a nutritious meal for her. Once dinner is over, Anemone insists on bathing and sleeping with him, which makes Kenichi smile since at least one person wants to call him daddy. A month later, Kenichi is told that Norseball was commended for defeating Shaga. As a reward, he was given the title of Baron and his very own territory. But what made Kenichi really happy was that the noble who hired Shaga for Primula's kidnapping was stripped of his title and lands. One day, during Kenichi's visit to Dahlia, he notices a similar version of his bicycle on the streets. He smiles, recalling how Mallow and Primula laughed at his drawing, but evidently, they took notice and started manufacturing their own versions of the vehicle. Since the Adventurers Guild was eternally thankful to him for taking out a scum like Shaga, they gave Kenichi extra money as a reward. But Kenichi, being a nice man, decided to distribute the reward among his squad, and then gave some to the women that he had rescued. As they stop by Anima's stall, Kenichi suddenly notices that he is being tailed. Quickly grabbing Anemone's hand, he tries to create distance between the stalkers but is ultimately cornered by them. A carriage arrives, and the cloaked men tell Kenichi to get in, but instead of following orders, he buys firecrackers from Walmart and uses them to warn the mysterious men to stay away. However, when they refuse to listen to his warning, Kenichi points his bow sling at them and states that he's going to crack their nuts if they take one more step. Luckily, Malo's carriage arrives in time, and he gets on it safely with Anemone. Upon learning that Kenichi was being followed, Malo tells him to seek Count Asclepius's help. However, Kenichi remains skeptical about seeking out a noble's help. Later that day, Malo tells Primula that he ran into Kenichi, causing her to whine about how they should thank him properly for giving them the idea of making the bicycles. The following day, Primula makes up her mind to make Kenichi hers. However, her dream was completely shattered when she found out Kenichi had evacuated from the forest. In the meantime, Kenichi, Anemone, and the bobcat have a blast together as they camp out and enjoy the wilderness. With no destination in mind, he decides to settle in the land just outside a little town called Astrantia. After summoning his log cabin, Kenichi asks his new daughter if they should come up with a name for their pet. Anemone, disappointedly, hears the list of names he has until she takes a liking to the name Vel. That night, Kenichi gives Anemone some lessons on English and maths, much to her annoyance. While she's busy solving word problems, Kenichi racks his head as he tries to find a cheaper alternative to kerosene. Since he now has plenty of time, Kenichi decides to conduct his own research by reading books on the subject. Seeing him flip his fingers like a tweaker, Anemone asks Kenichi what he is up to. When he reveals that he's reading a book, Anemone insists on reading too. However, Kenichi tells her that the book is written in another world's language, but that only excites the girl, prompting Kenichi to buy a bedtime story for Anemone. The next day, as Kenichi is setting up the solar panels, he hears rustling in the bushes and quickly guards up. To his surprise, Miley bamboozles him and complains about being left behind. She further reveals how she had to sniff out the bobcat's scent to find him. After giving him a little beating, Miley heads inside to greet Anemone, who is happy to see her. Kenichi shortly comes inside and reveals to Anemone that Miley will be living with them from now on, which excites the girl further. Later that day, Kenichi asks Miley if things have changed around Dahlia since his disappearance, and she gives him the news that Norseball has proposed to Primula. This makes him a little sad since he never got to taste Primula's coconuts. After bathing, Miley notices the bedtime story and is amazed by the pictures in it. Observing her fascination, Kenichi wonders if he should start selling picture books, but realizes it will be too weird if he sells fairy tales from his world. However, feeling curious, he asks the girls if they've heard of fairy tales, and both Anemone and Miley give him a list of stories featuring knights, queens, and elves. Upon hearing about the elves, Kenichi becomes interested and asks Miley to tell him about that story. Miley then reveals the love story of an elf princess and a human prince. However, since both humans and elves were against this union, they combined forces and nearly murdered the elf princess, but luckily, the lovers received help from fairies, allowing them to lead a good life together in the deep woods. Fascinated by the story, Kenichi instantly gets to work by producing a picture book on the elf princess and the human prince. The results are spectacular as Anemone and Miley instantly get hooked on the books. This makes Kenichi smile as he hopes that Anemone won't turn out to be a degenerate after graduating from his crayon school. Suddenly, he sees a boat in the river and urges Anemone to go inside the house. As Miley takes Anemone inside, Kenichi hurries to the riverbank and cautiously asks the sailor what business he has on this private land. The man pleads with Kenichi to relax, revealing that he and the Beastmen are residents of Santanka, the village across from the lake. When Kenichi asks the man why he has come here, he tells him that the villagers wanted to be sure there weren't bandits camping out near their village. Before Kenichi can respond to him, Vel comes and affectionately rubs himself against him. Seeing this, the Beastman quickly tells his partner that bobcats rarely get attached to humans, so there's no way of Kenichi being a scum. Taking his partner's word, the man introduces himself as Croton, while the Beastman tells Kenichi he's Nine-Yaz. After the introductions, Crouton apologizes for his intrusion, revealing that he used to work for the government in Astrantia, so he developed a habit of being overly cautious. Looking around Kenichi's place, Crouton finds the picture books and asks him if they're for sale. That night during dinner, Kenichi reveals that he made his first coin by selling a picture book to Crouton. The next day, Miley rewards Kenichi for his hard work by letting him eat her poo. After feeding on Miley's kitty, Kenichi regains his motivation and begins working on creating fuel. Despite being somewhat successful, he is unable to enjoy his success since Anemone starts giving him a cold shoulder for depriving her of his attention. So to cheer her up, Kenichi asks her if she'd like to go to Estrantia with him. The next day, the trio enters the town, and Kenichi makes a quick stop at the Adventurers Guild, where he is greeted by the receptionist's Gazanga. After replaying the bounce effect twice in his head, Kenichi finally reveals that he's here to get registered. As he hands the girl his work permit from Dahlia, the girl goes to check the records and is shocked that he's the infamous Kenichi who defeated Shaga. After the registration, they stop by to grab food, but are dissatisfied with the bland flavor. This makes Kenichi smile as he realizes he has completely spoiled Anemone and Maeli with his flavorful cooking. After having food, they stop by a shop selling magic items. A tool particularly catches Kenichi's eye as he realizes that it will help him get closer to making cheap biodiesel. While Kenichi buys the item, Anemone picks up a grimoire and tells Kenichi that he wants to buy it. Feeling excited, he asks the old shopkeeper if it'll help him learn magic, but she informs him that if someone doesn't possess magic power, then the grimoire is useless to them. Of course, Kenichi, being a shopaholic, quickly buys the grimoire. After leaving the shop, he stumbles upon Croton and his daughter being harassed by a couple of villains. Not wanting to reveal his identity, Kenichi puts on a mask and decides to help them out. After scaring the bad guys away, Kenichi asks Croton why he was attacked and reveals that those men were Zutera's thugs, aka the Spice Syndicate. Hearing this, Kenichi recalls how there was a spice syndicate named Bacopa in Dahlia as well. Since Croton had arrested a bunch of his goons, Zutera launched a harassment campaign against him. In the meantime, Anemone and Croton's daughter befriend each other. A couple of days later, Croton and his family visit Kenichi and his family. As their families get closer to each other, Kenichi lets Mary and Anemone make their own version of Cinderella, which helps him make bank. Then one day, Croton shows up on his doorstep with a bag of gold, begging for his help, and reveals that Mary is suffering from a bad fever. Worried for his daughter, Kenichi hands him modern medicine and later brings the owner of the shopkeeper to do healing magic on Mary. However, she tells Kenichi it'll be hard to cure Mary of chicory fever since the fever can only be cured with a specific kind of flower seeds. As the men set out to get the seeds, the thugs from the earlier plot to harm Croton. A few hours later, the boys arrive at the lake where they're supposed to find the flower, when suddenly Nyanya sniffs an unfamiliar scent and warns everyone to guard up. But seconds later, Vel shows up from the bushes, causing everyone to sigh in relief. Kenichi then summons a lifeboat, which he uses to get the flower. Once the mission is accomplished, Croton thanks Kenichi for saving his family, when suddenly Vel starts to hiss in anger. Nyanyas quickly catches up and reveals that a group of beasts has surrounded them. However, Kenichi remains unfazed and hands the boys some swords for their protection. He then urges them to go to Mary instantly while he stays behind to buy them time. However, both Croton and Nyanyas find the idea too reckless, but Kenichi insists that time is essential in saving Mary's life, so they must hurry back. Feeling grateful, Croton and Nyanyas rush home, but end up getting surrounded by the pack of wolves. This strikes Kenichi as odd, as he wonders why the beasts are hell-bent on following Nyanyas and Croton when suddenly Vel jumps on the thugs hiding in the trees. After taking those two out, Vel turns his attention to the dogman hiding close by. Noticing the whistle-like thing the dogman was holding, Kenichi finally realizes that he was controlling the wolves to attack Croton and Nyanyas. With the thugs compromised, Croton and Nyanyas take off when suddenly the dogman throws off Vel and reaches for the whistle, when suddenly the wolves freeze as the ground starts to shake. In seconds, a huge bear appears, frightening the wolves and causing them to run away. As the bear approaches the thugs, he quickly takes out the dogman, prompting the thugs to run away. With no one left to hunt, the bear focuses on Kenichi, but before he can reach him, Vel attacks him. Unfortunately, the bear proves too powerful for the feline, but his efforts allow Kenichi to summon his bow sling. However, despite being hit by an arrow, the bear continues to growl ferociously, prompting Kenichi to throw a firecracker at him. To his dismay, the bear catches them in his mouth. Kenichi watches the spectacle as the bear faces the wrath of the firecrackers. In the meantime, he summons the backhoe and uses it to boink the bear. After neutralizing the apex predator, Kenichi adds him and the backhoe to his item box. With that, he rushes back and learns that Mary's fever has broken. As Croton thanks him for all his help, Kenichi tells him to come out with him, where he reveals that he struck a deal with the dogman. Turns out, Kenichi provided the dogman with medical aid and made him promise not to ever harm Croton. However, the dogman warned him that Croton won't be safe if he continues to live in the village since many harbor a grudge against him. After relaying all this to Croton, Kenichi tells him to move out of Santanka, but the man reveals that he doesn't know where to go since Zutera has connections everywhere. Suddenly, Kenichi remembers that Norspal is a baron now, so he advises Croton to live in his barony. In response, Croton thanks Kenichi for all his help, but tells him that he needs some time to consider this relocation. A few days later, Croton informs Kenichi that he and Nyanyas are going to get settled in Norspal's barony, but since Mary is still too sick for traveling, she will stay behind with his mother for the time being. A couple of hours after their departure, the dogman arrives and tells Kenichi that he took care of those hunting Croton. However, the sight of him pisses Maeli, who tells Kenichi not to trust a dogman. Scoffing at this, he tells Maeli that she doesn't know the loyalty dogmen possess. With that, he takes his leave, revealing he can't stay in Astrantia since he has made way too many enemies. The next day, Kenichi goes to a butcher and presents him with the body of the tusk bear. Startled by the corpse, the butcher tells Kenichi that he must be a Giga Chad to be able to hunt down such a mighty predator. Smiling at the comment, Kenichi asks the butcher to scoop out the magic stones hidden inside the bear. However, since the job will take time, Kenichi returns home, where he successfully creates biodiesel. After that, he returns to the town, where he stops by the magic shop to pick up the grimoire. Inside, the shopkeeper tells Kenichi all about the magic stone inserted inside the book, revealing that he'll need it to activate spells. Exiting the shop, Kenichi then goes to pick up the bear meat and the magic stones. However, as he leaves the shop, a chill runs down his spine when, suddenly, a cloaked woman grabs his hand and states that she has finally found him. Once the cloak lifts, Kenichi finds Primula scowling at him as she complains to him for leaving her behind. Realizing that Primula is scaring away all the hoes, Kenichi begs her to go somewhere private. Soon, they arrive at a hotel where Primula reveals how he helped her company, which bores Kenichi since he's only interested in seeing her melons jiggle. After ranting about herself, Primula tells Kenichi that everyone is upset at him for packing up and leaving without saying goodbye. At that moment, Kenichi realizes that he was more loved than he thought. He then apologizes and tells Primula to go back and apologize on his behalf, but she turns him down and states that she wants to use his face as a chair tonight. Unable to control the beast in his pants, Kenichi takes Primula to her room, where they end up doing the deed. The next day, Kenichi returns home with Primula and instantly gets in trouble when she finds out he had been living with Maeli and Anemone. Wanting to resolve the conflict, Kenichi nervously tells Primula that there's no need to be jealous since he has plenty of white sauce for her and Maeli. Meanwhile, Anemone becomes frustrated and tells Kenichi to stop bringing back girls since their cabin isn't a crack house. Later that night, Kenichi tries to work up the grimoire but fails. Realizing that he has no magic power, he decides to sell the book when Anemone takes the grimoire and musters up a fireball which ends up burning their cabin. Kenichi moves quickly and buys a bunch of extinguishers from Walmart, and thankfully, they manage to keep the cabin safe and sound. Feeling guilty, Anemone apologizes repeatedly, but in response, Kenichi tells her it's amazing that she can use magic when she suddenly ends up fainting. A few hours later, when Anemone regains consciousness, Kenichi gives her canned peaches. While she rests, the girls snack on the peaches and are shocked by the sweetness. Curious, Primula asks Kenichi if they're filled with sugar, and when he confirms, she tells him that only nobles can have such a delicacy since they have a monopoly on sugar. A few days later, both Anemone and Mary make a full recovery, which puts everyone in a celebratory mood. So in the end, Kenichi hosts a cookout where he grills the meat he got from the tusked bear. Sighing blissfully, Kenichi admits that this is what he always envisioned his life to look like when all of a sudden, his guests complain about the meat being hard. In response, Kenichi tells them to shut up, or he'll show them what hard meat really looks like. But since he's a good host, he goes back inside and cooks up a special sauce, which allows the meat to get tender and flavorful. With his cooking being a hit, Kenichi earns everyone's praise. Later on, Primula spots the picture book and excitedly tells Kenichi that they will bank by selling it to crayon eaters. However, hearing her go on frightens Kenichi as he realizes that Primula, a feisty merchant, won't let him have a slow life. In the end, Kenichi surrenders to Primula's greed and asks her what else they will sell. She quickly tells him that they can sell his curry and the canned peaches from earlier. Finding the idea agreeable, Kenichi tells Primula he is okay with her doing business in Astrantia, when Croton's wife, Seinuria, insists on helping them with their stalls, as she reveals she used to be a famous waitress. Once everything is settled, Kenichi buys a food cart and lets Primula and Seinuria hold out a stall in the middle of Astrantia. Soon enough, everyone starts flocking around their stall since, for the first time, ordinary civilians get a taste of delicious food. Primula smiles at the sight when, all of a sudden, two angry men complain that a bug was inside their food, which upsets Primula since she knows there's no way her food was rotten. In the meantime, Kenichi uses a drone to inspect the surrounding areas when Anemone spots a peculiar ore growing on the mountain surface. Before he can think of a way to mine it, he realizes that it's getting late and heads to meet Primula. Upon arrival, he is greeted by another beast woman when Primula reveals the whole encounter with the two men and how they accused her of selling rotten stew. However, Nyamina intervened in time, revealing to everyone that the men are lying sack of turds since she saw them putting bugs on the food. Feeling cornered, the men ran away, and Primula decided to hire Nyamina as her bodyguard on the spot. Once they return home, Miley instantly shows hostility towards Nyamina, but Kenichi assures her that she is only here to have dinner with them. Sighing in relief, Miley states she thought he was hellbent on spreading funny diseases. Kenichi then treats Nyamina to food and wine as promised, and when she wonders if she's in heaven, Kenichi offers her a bath, which gets heated up by Anemone's fireball. Later that night, when Nyamina finds Kenichi teaching Anemone, he asks why he's educating a girl, prompting him to reveal that he wants his daughter to have a lot of opportunities. With that said, Kenichi asks Anemone to learn how to do business from Primula, but she quickly shuts down the idea, insisting that she only wants to learn magic so she can fight dragons by his side. This weirds out Kenichi since all he wants to do is enjoy a nice, quiet life while a cat girl juggles his nuts. A couple of days later, Kenichi builds a scaffolding to scale the mountain with Miley and Anemone's help. Later that evening, Primula and Nyamina return from work and find Kenichi proudly standing in front of the scaffolding. Seeing that, Primula tells him that he seems to have a lot of things in his item box. In response, Kenichi states that he does possess a lot of things, but they're all a secret. Before she can argue, Kenichi smashes his lips against hers, much to Nyamina's annoyance, who complains that she hates public displays of affection. The next day, Kenichi and all his people head towards the mountain top. Seeing everyone in a good mood, Kenichi smiles and gets to work. After buying a hammer drill from Walmart, he manages to extract the ore from the mountain, and upon appraising it, he learns that it's a rock called rhodonite that is worth 200,000 yen. Realizing he's the richest man in Walmart now, Kenichi celebrates it by creating a Michelin-starred course meal. Upon eating the gyozas prepared by Kenichi, the girls are all impressed, while Primula asks him if he can help them make mayonnaise to further expand their business. Despite finding the idea profitable, Kenichi asks her if she can handle so much at once, which prompts Primula to reveal that she is just going to hire more staff. That night, Kenichi prepares steak for everyone, which fascinates Nyamina so much that she starts getting all freaky with him. Afterwards, she begs Kenichi to let her stay, insisting that she only wants to eat his food. As Kenichi agrees, Nyamina tries to thank him by offering her back gate, but then Miley angrily opens the door and tells Kenichi that he could have hers too. A couple of months later, Primula manages to expand her business and takes the name of Corolla for her food stall. She also hires a cook named Iris, who at first assumes Kenichi to be her dad. After some more time, Primula decides to buy a warehouse to maximize gains. To celebrate the opening of Corolla's second branch, Kenichi has a cookout with his girls, where Primula thanks him for giving her such flavorful ingredients that helped her expand her own business. A couple of months later, Primula gets invited to meet Lady Kanan, the wife of Viscount Eupatorium, the man who controls the whole of Astrantia. Meanwhile, Kenichi visits the magic shop where he buys a book on explosive magic while Anemone selects a grimoire on household magic. Later that night, Primula reveals that Kanan wants a brooch since she heard a noblewoman boast about getting one from the Mallow Company. In response, Kenichi quickly buys a brooch from Walmart and hands it to Primula, who notices a woman engraved on it. Upon examining it further, she tells Kenichi that it looks like Lady Kanan, which gives Kenichi the wicked idea of making it look like the brooch was custom-made. However, when he shares the idea with Primula, she quietly stares at the brooch, which confuses him. Nyamina notices how Kenichi is soft towards Primula and gets a little upset, while Miley angrily seethes in her chair, knowing Nyamina is trying to hop on Kenichi's magical dawn. The next day, as Primula and Nyamina leave to tend to business, Miley informs Kenichi about the dungeons, which excites him. He asks why he didn't mention this earlier during dinner. She angrily reveals that she didn't want his side chicks tagging along, prompting Kenichi to reveal that she is the side chick, which upsets her further. After a few minutes of bike riding, Kenichi, Anemone, Miley, and the Bobcat arrive at the dungeon. After exploring the insides, Kenichi finds green crystals and quickly brings out his tools to excavate them. Out of nowhere, Miley warns Kenichi that something is heading towards them, and before he can prepare, a freaky cave spider appears and starts throwing his white goo at the girls. As Anemone witnesses this, she freezes in terror, causing Kenichi to summon his bike as they all manage to flee from the cave on time. After reaching a safe distance, Kenichi wonders why the spider isn't following them when Miley reveals that cave spiders only come out at night to hunt. Later that day, when Nyamina learns about their little adventure, she becomes upset and asks why she wasn't invited. She quickly realizes it was all Mayeli's doing and states that she is coming tomorrow to hunt that spider. However, Kenichi reminds her that she has to guard Primula when the boss babe states that she is taking a few days off from work. Surprised and concerned, Kenichi asks Primula if she is okay, and she absent-mindedly tells him that she is fine. Before bed, Kenichi tells Anemone that she can read the book on explosive magic. Upon hearing this, Naimina assures Anemone that she is going to help her become a strong adventurer. A few days later, Kenichi and the squad arrive at the cave's entrance, but before entering, he asks Anemone if she's okay. Once she assures Kenichi that she feels ready to go kaboom on the spider, he feels relaxed and wonders what Naimina said to her that boosted her confidence. After heading inside the cave, Kenichi tells the girls that the cave spider will likely appear once he starts the hammer drill. With everyone on guard, he begins the excavation process when suddenly the spider appears. This time, Kenichi equips the girls with insecticide, which bamboozles the spider, and while his vision is compromised, Anemone blasts the creepy crawly with her fireball. As the spider goes off in his lair, Naimina urges everyone to hunt down the spider until he's dead. Finding the idea agreeable, they follow the spider and learn that the spider is already dead when suddenly another spider shows up. Observing the body, Miley reveals that this one's a female, which prompts Kenichi to leave the cave. He adds that with the male spider gone, the female spider will die on her own since there won't be anyone to feed her. However, as they turn to leave, the spider blocks the entrance, hell-bent on taking them all with her to the grave. Ticked off by the old spider, Kenichi buys an excavator, which shocks everyone, but especially Naimina, who is new to the team. Seeing her frightened, Miley reveals that it's just one of Kenichi's iron beasts, while he and Anemone start the excavator to finish off the spider. However, midway, the excavator dies down, prompting Anemone to use her magic to blast the spider. This buys Kenichi and the excavator time for the final blow. To make up for the cost of the excavator, Kenichi quickly takes all the crystals with him and finally returns home. However, when Primula sees the spider, she lets out a terrified scream. Later on, Kenichi unveils the spider egg and announces that he's going to whip a tasty meal out of it, which grosses everyone out. Annoyed by their reaction, Kenichi tells them they don't have to eat it and gets to work. Once he is done making a custard out of the egg, Anemone does everyone a favor and takes the first bite. Only after she gives her approval, the girls join in and are impressed by the taste. Noticing the flavor of the cheese, Primula asks Kenichi how he managed to obtain such a rare ingredient, and he accidentally blurts out that cheese is actually quite easy to make. Startled by this, Primula quickly tells Kenichi that she wants him to teach her how to make cheese. In the end, Kenichi shows her the process that allows everyone to taste the yummy cottage cheese. A few seconds later, Primula reveals that she intends to teach Lady Cannon how to make cheese. Shocked, Kenichi tells her that he doesn't want his family getting involved with nobles. Interrupting their conversation, Naimina finally reveals to him that Primula has been constantly getting harassed by thugs who accuse her of getting spices without going through Zutera. And the person who spread this news is Thogalum, a corrupt merchant who has been salty about Primula's success for quite some time. Enraged by the revelation, Kenichi tells Primula that he can take care of Thogalum right away, but she insists on handling her business by herself. A few days later, Thogalum receives a letter from Lady Canaan, who warns him not to harass Primula. And just like that, Corolla reopens, and Primula's business receives more traction than ever. Then one day, Lady Canaan surprises Kenichi with an unannounced visit. As they all sit down for a chat, she reveals how the Kingdom of Kaidan has an irrigation project going on, but only her ugly, useless husband has failed to build canals in his territory due to all the infighting between the lords. Continuing on, Canaan states that if they do not build the canals within the given deadline, they will be stripped of their titles. This is why she has come here to seek his help, and in return, she will let him give her back shots, but Kenichi quickly turns her down. Composing herself, Canaan then offers him a high protection grimoire, which fascinates Naimina, who reveals to Kenichi that high protection magic can even shield them from a dragon's breath. As Kenichi imagines Anemone using that level of magic, he quickly tells Lady Canaan he will accept the job. Upon hearing this, she grants him to choose whatever he wants from their warehouse, and Kenichi quickly takes all the furniture that he appraises and learns that he is now stinking rich. Without further ado, Kenichi buys a car from Walmart and drives towards the construction site. However, on the way, Canaan asks Kenichi if he really doesn't want to lie with her. In response, he sternly tells her that he already has a wife and side pieces to keep his Johnson warm. Once they arrive at the destination, Kenichi is greeted by the beast folk from Dahlia, who instantly take a liking to Naimina, much to Miley's annoyance. In the meantime, Canaan introduces Kenichi to Porridge and other merchants who had been helping her in the construction of the canals. Interrupting the conversation, Primula is shocked to find that the nobles are using overpriced tools for the project. However, in response, the fat merchant tells her to zip it since only he can help them procure that many axes. But, since Primula is completely soft for Kanan, she pleads with Kenichi to do something, which prompts him to summon multiple axes that he agrees to sell for just 1 silver coin. This frustrates the fat merchant, who reminds Kanan that they work for the Thogalum Trading Company, which puts Kanan in an uncomfortable spot. Judging her reaction, Kenichi recalls the information he got on Thogalum, who dug his way deep into Estrantia's administration. There were even rumors about the Viscount asking him to handle his dirty businesses on occasion. However, Kenichi decides to ignore all the dirty politics and focuses on getting his job done. After gathering enough fuel, he summons the backhoe, which impresses the royal MILF. After completing his day's work, Kenichi invites Kanan to have dinner with him and his family. As she takes a bite of Kenichi's cooking, she wonders just how talented those hands really are. Meanwhile, Kenichi breathes a sigh of relief, seeing Kanan enjoy her food, and then turns to invite the beast folk to join in. However, they nervously turn him down, revealing that if they join in, other workers would feel left out since they're also hungry. Primula quickly seizes this opportunity and tells Kenichi that she's going to move Corolla to the construction site so she can make a pretty penny by feeding the workers. That night, Kanan smiles, seeing all her workers fed and happy. Later on, Kenichi shows her to the bath area, where she reveals that her fat husband's tiny tool doesn't satisfy her and orders him to bathe with her. Since he can't turn down a royal's command, Kenichi obliges, but when Kanan asks him to get freaky with her, he quickly takes his exit, revealing that he's a family man. The next day, Kenichi wakes up and finds Kanan serving food to all her workers, which somehow charms him, and he confesses that he nearly fell for her. This makes her laugh while his cuddle crew gives him death stares. All of a sudden, a goth baddie arrives and accuses Primula of stealing customers from her tavern. However, knowing that she charges the poor workers crazy money, Primula firmly tells her that her food must taste like unwashed cheeks, that all her customers came to Corolla. Frustrated by the competition, the goth baddie ends up lowering her prices so she doesn't go bankrupt. A couple of days later, Kanan's servants arrive to lend her a hand, but she assures everyone that she intends to help them all. With the growing number of staff, Kenichi realizes that he has a shortage of bathwater. Just when he wonders what to do, he finds the beast folk, who reveal to him that there's a spring nearby where they usually bathe. However, most people can't access it since it's difficult for humans to get there on foot. Upon hearing this, he tells the beast folk that if they get water from him, he will give them free liquor. After solving one problem, Kenichi quickly finds himself in another pickle, as Lady Kanan tries her best to FaceTime his weenie. After a lot of struggle, he manages to send her to bed, and the next morning, Kenichi shows her a contract which he got her to sign while she was mad drunk. Upon reading the contract, which explicitly states that from now on she'll follow his lead, Kanan asks Kenichi if he's planning on making her use her body for his shady business. He sighs at her colorful fantasies and tells Kanan that he drafted this contract so she would stop trying to diddle him. Out of frustration, Kanan squeezes her milkers and tells Kenichi that her milk can help him become a very strong boy, but he quickly turns away before he gets honey-trapped. A few months later, Kenichi proudly looks at his efforts coming to fruition as he manages to complete the canal within the given deadline. To celebrate this feat, Viscount Eupatorium holds a celebration which Kenichi is forced to attend. During the event, he notices a Viscount Thunbergia being salty over the completion of the canal. As he angrily turns to leave, Primula informs Kenichi that there's an ex-noble from Dahila sitting in Thunbergia's carriage who is the same person who commissioned Shaga to kidnap her. Later on, Kenichi and Primula are greeted by Viscount Eupatorium, who thanks them for helping them out. He then inquires about his picture books, and Kenichi soon learns that the Viscount loves to paint like the great artist from Germany. During their conversation, Eupatorium reveals to Kenichi that he can't remove Thogalum forcefully since he doesn't have enough knights. In response, Kenichi tells him that he's willing to help him out to fight the evil merchant. Meanwhile, in the royal court, Princess Lilith comes to meet her mother, who reveals to her how the Lord of Estrantia surprisingly managed to finish the canal in time. She further adds that Viscount Thunbergia must be seething in anger since she had received countless letters from him, stating that Viscount Eupatorium won't be able to finish the canal by the given deadline, and urged her to make him the new Lord of Estrantia. When Lilith asks her mother what led to Viscount Eupatorium's sudden success, the queen reveals that he got help from the same mage that she keeps hearing about. That night, as Kenichi and his squad bathe together, Naimena reveals to everyone that Anemone can use magic because she must have inherited the power from her mother. Now intrigued, Kenichi asks Anemone if she remembers anything about her mother, but when she explains that she has no recollection of her past, Kenichi asks her if she'd like them to search for her family. Anemone quickly dismisses the idea, which prompts Nyamina to state that Anemone doesn't want her family since she's in love with him. Disgusted by the mere idea, Kenichi states that he's not a loser like Stephen Hawkins, who goes after freshies due to terrible Riz game. The next day, Kenichi goes to purchase another grimoire for Anemone and decides to ask the old shopkeeper if she knows something about Anemone's mother. In response, she reveals that while she doesn't know much, she recalls a mage named Armeria with similar hair color to Anemone who disappeared 10 years ago. She also adds that the high protection grimoire he's purchasing was written by none other than Armeria. As they return home, Anemone tries to test out a spell but fails when suddenly she kneels in pain and states that her stomach hurts. Fearing for the worst, Kenichi tries to buy medicine, but Miley stops him and states that she can sense Anemone has just gotten her first visit from the Red Army. Freaking out, he hurries home, where he puts Primula in charge of Anemone. A few minutes later, Anemone returns and tells Kenichi that since she's a grown-up, she now wants to have his bairn. Laughing nervously, Kenichi tells Anemone that she needs to grow up a little more, that which prompts Primula to squeeze his ear as she scolds him for being a diddler. A couple of days later, Mallow arrives and tells Kenichi that he's here to help him dispose of Thogalum. However, seizing this opportunity, Kenichi tells Mallow that he intends to wife up Primula. Laughing happily, Mallow admits that he had assumed he would have been a grandfather by now since Primula has been living with him for months. That night, Kenichi hosts a celebration for his future wedding, where everyone enjoys fine wine from Walmart. Smiling in satisfaction, Kenichi thinks about how everything is going smoothly since Mallow will be opening his trading company in Estrantia, so they can sideline Thogalum's company. A week later, Crouton arrives with Norseball, who goes into depression for 5 minutes after learning that Primula is now Kenichi's wife. However, after seeing them happy together, Norseball smiles and tells Kenichi and Primula that he hopes they have a happy marriage. Later on, they all arrive in Estrantia, where Kenichi goes ahead to start a fight with Thogalum by laying out the cave spider's corpse in front of his stalls. Seeing the commotion, Thogalum comes out with the goth baddie and the fat merchant from the construction site, who quickly tell the old man that Kenichi was the one who caused them problems during the canal building process. Enraged by this, Thogalum tells his men to beat up Kenichi till he's black and blue. Crouton and Kenichi's other friends quickly come to his aid, but just when the fight is about to start, Vel joins them. Now seeing the great Bobcat in Kenichi's squad, the beastmen fighting for Thogalum throw up their arms, stating that they can't anger the messenger of their god. As Thogalum finds himself cornered, a squad of dogmen offers to help him for money. Seeing the leader, Vel begins to growl, which makes Kenichi realize that he's the one who harmed Vel and Dahlia. While his people handle the dogmen, Kenichi uses his time to destroy Thogalum's entire business. Suddenly, Mallow arrives and tells Kenichi not to destroy the building, as he's planning on holding his business there. Infuriated by Mallow's audacity, Thogalum states that he won't get away with this. That's when Kenichi reveals that it's game over since he'll be locked up for planning the Viscount's assassination. Before he can ask what he means by that, Eupatorium arrives on the scene and pretends to be hurt by his betrayal. At that moment, Thogalum realizes that everyone has turned against him, so he decides to leave Astrantia with his family. However, before boarding the carriage, Thogalum turns to Mallow and states that he needs to recall the time when his daughter was kidnapped. Just then, a royal messenger arrives and tells them that the king wants to see Kenichi. This makes Thogalum laugh as he tells Kenichi and his group that their troubles are only starting. A terrible feeling creeps up inside Kenichi's chest as he wonders if Primula was kidnapped because of him. That night, he shares his concern with Mallow and Primula, who assures him that her kidnapping isn't his fault, and as his wife, she wishes to support him when he goes to meet the king. The next day, Kenichi puts all his assets in his item box and asks Eupatorium what will happen if he just escapes Estrantia. However, he warns him that it would be a bad idea as he will be reincarnated for his escape. In the end, Kenichi and his family decide to head to the royal capital, completely unaware of the danger waiting for them. After a long journey, Kenichi and his harem arrive at the royal capital, where they find golems doing manual labor. After reaching the castle, they are made to wait an hour before Lilith and her team of royals come to greet them. Almost instantly, Kenichi is met with suspicion as the royals ask him how he managed to come to the capital so quickly. In response, Kenichi summons his car and reveals that he used his horseless carriage. Amazed by the sight of the car, Lilith gets inside it and asks Kenichi for a ride. Forced to obey, he drives her around and asks Lilith what would happen if he just takes off with her. Instead of being fearful, Lilith states that she'd have fun, which gives Kenichi a rough idea about her daring nature. After the ride, Lilith gets out while her royal squad cusses Kenichi for putting the princess in danger. However, Lilith shuts them up by stating that she knows they're not worried about her, so they can drop the act. Shifting her attention back to Kenichi, Lilith tells him that she likes his vibe and asks him to pick a reward for himself. After thinking briefly, Kenichi states that he wants to camp out in the royal garden since he doesn't want to stay in a cramped room with all his family. Laughing at his simple request, Lilith grants his wish, stating that it'll probably take her father, the king, several weeks before he can speak to him. With everything settled, they all head to the garden where Kenichi summons his cabin, which fascinates Lilith so much that she announces that she will stay with him. Shocked by her decision, her royal squad begs her to reconsider, but she ignores everyone. Meanwhile, Kenichi becomes frustrated and tells Lilith that he doesn't have the means to give her the required protocol, which causes Lilith to assure him that he doesn't need to fret. After easing up a little, Kenichi summons the backhoe to install his bathhouse. However, upon seeing the vehicle, Lilith becomes curious and mindlessly sits on his lap while Kenichi focuses on getting the job done. Once his work is done, he gets out, carrying the princess in his arms, which upsets a knight who raises his sword to attack him. Soon, a whole battle breaks out as Anemone throws fireballs at the knight. Fed up with the ruckus, Lilith tells everyone to cease fighting at once. With that, she approaches Anemone and commends her for being so skilled with magic at a tender age. Later on, Kenichi begins preparing dinner, and Lilith is immediately in awe over his mastery of food. As he presents the curry to the princess, she is instantly hooked on the taste and asks Kenichi if all the commoners are having such flavorful meals. However, he bluntly tells Lilith that because of the spice syndicates, the common people do not get to enjoy delicious food. After having the meal, Kenichi sells Lilith the curry powder he used, including the cutlery, which she had taken a liking to. As she whispers in Kenichi's ear about him being a clever merchant, Anemone gets upset and states that they are too close. Confused by her reaction, Lilith states that she thought Anemone was Kenichi's daughter. The brat quickly reveals that she might call Kenichi father now, but in 5 years, she will be calling him daddy. At that moment, Lilith realizes that Anemone is in love with Kenichi and sadly says that she doesn't have the liberty to love anyone because of her royal status. Later that night, while the princess takes over the cabin, Kenichi decides to sleep out in the open with Maeli, Naimena, and the bobcat since he doesn't want to be accused of diddling the princess. A few days later, Lilith puts Kenichi on a mission to hunt down all the rats. So without further ado, he buys rat poison from Walmart and saves the kingdom from the Black Death. Later on, Lilith makes him have an auction for the cave spider's corpse, and when that doesn't amuse her, she asks Kenichi how he would abduct her from the castle if he were Diddy. This prompts him to show her the scaffolding, which earns him a lot of curses from the knights and guards who are tasked with the protection of the princess. Pleased by all his efforts, Lilith then treats Kenichi to a meal prepared by the royal cook, Sambak. Just when he's starting to enjoy, Lilith asks him if he has a food item that can't be produced by Sambak, so to appease the princess, Kenichi buys Ferrero Rochers. As Lilith gives the chocolate a try, she is mesmerized by the taste and asks Sambak to try it out too. However, when the royal cook tastes the chocolate, he admits to the princess that he can't make something like this. The next day, Lilith tells Kenichi that her mother got mad because she got to have the chocolates before her. She also reveals that since the queen isn't her birth mother, these types of things tend to happen between them. In response, Kenichi quickly orders another pack of chocolates and hands it to Lilith, who warns him to be prepared since he'll be summoned anytime soon. A few weeks later, Lilith asks Kenichi to exterminate ghosts from the castle, revealing that her maids are constantly fussing about being watched. Without wasting time, Kenichi buys Mia Khalifa's bathwater from Walmart and uses it to scare away all the innocent ghosts. Since only the beastwomen could feel the otherworldly presence, they are amazed when they no longer sense a presence in the rooms. After dousing the whole castle with the bathwater, Lilith rewards Kenichi for his hard work by letting him enter the royal library with Anemone. There, he comes across a lot of fascinating books, like how to create golems or books on forbidden magic. Thinking that he's found a gold mine, Kenichi quickly copies all the books, despite knowing what he's doing is wrong. Later that night, Lilith shows Kenichi just how kind she is by letting him do naughty things to her maid, Malin. After a passionate night, Kenichi and his squad are granted an audience with the royal family. As they enter the courtroom, a lot of nobles whisper about his authenticity, while some frown upon the presence of the beastwomen. Meanwhile, Kenichi feels the gaze of the queen and shudders in horror when the royal announcer reveals that Kenichi will partake in a match per the queen's order. Before he has a chance to react, his opponent, a mage named Melissa, appears and trolls him for being a middle-aged man. With that, she summons a lesser dragon, shocking everyone in the audience. In retaliation, Kenichi summons the excavator, which stuns Melissa since such a beast is never heard of. Recomposing herself, Melissa pushes the dragon to unleash a fireball, which Kenichi evades by mere inches. He then hears everyone mocking him, as they wonder what sort of color his corpse will take once he gets burned by the dragon. Horrified by their words, Kenichi realizes that he's in a Game of Thrones world with bloodthirsty nobles and fire-breathing dragons. As the lesser dragon strikes again, Animan unleashes high protection magic for the first time, which surprises Melissa. However, the mage remains undeterred and continues to give Kenichi a tough time. Just then, Anemone creates a golem hand, which gives Kenichi enough time to land deadly jabs at the dragon. After taking the life of the dragon, Kenichi turns to thank Anemone, but is filled with rage when he finds her nose bleeding due to exhaustion. So he tells the royal majesties that he's going to tear their castle apart, and then he's going to flatten their mid-tier country. However, just as the words leave his mouth, Kenichi realizes that he's putting his loved ones in danger, so he quickly apologizes to Primula, who lovingly tells him that she's going to follow him no matter where he goes. Similarly, Maeli, Naimena, and Anemone assure him that they're going to support him through thick and thin. Before things can escalate, Lilith intervenes and states that the royal family will forgive his transgression if he marries her. But Kenichi curtly declines, making it clear that he's not going to marry her and become the royal's puppet. Shattered by his rejection, Lilith then offers him to give her a good gift for her upcoming birthday. Kenichi instantly realizes that Lilith is challenging him to give her a gift that no other noble can give her. That's when Primula reveals that his products are incredible because of how even and uniform they all look. Hearing this, Kenichi gifts Lilith a pearl necklace, and seeing all the beads in even sizes, Lilith exclaims that she has never owned a necklace like this. Delighted by her gift, she hands Kenichi a paper that states that he can live his life as he sees fit. Suddenly, the queen, burning with envy, asks Kenichi where her present is, so he quickly hands her a similar necklace. Impressed by the jewelry, the queen tells Kenichi that he can bang her, which shocks Kenichi as he wonders if the king is into watching his wife getting clapped. To save himself the headache, Kenichi politely tells her not to scare him with such jokes. She then orders him to call her Amara. Once Kenichi realizes that Queen Amara is soft on him, he asks her if he can have her unused furniture. As they enter the storeroom, Kenichi quickly appraises the furniture and is amazed by the cost of the royal antique. During the storage process, Kenichi learns that Amara had deliberately hosted the match in the royal court as she wanted to burn down her opponents in the crossfire. At that moment, Kenichi realizes that Amara is truly a shrewd ruler. A few days later, he receives a land as his ultimate reward. But since owning land comes with a title, Kenichi was then made a baron. By their trip's end, Kenichi was forced to purchase a bigger vehicle since Lilith and Malin insisted on coming with him. As Kenichi rides towards his new home, he becomes hopeful that he will finally get to live his low life. Do you think Kenichi will achieve his dream? If so, comment Twinks, and as always, like and subscribe for more.